Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98, for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Breaking news around 9 p.m. last night, a PSA Airlines CRJ700 regional jet collided in midair with a Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter while on approach to runway 33 at Reagan National Airport. The regional jet was operating as Flight 5342 for American Airlines. It departed from Wichita, Kansas. American Airlines confirmed there were 60 passengers and 4 crew members on board. There were 3 soldiers on the helicopter at the time of the crash, according to the U.S. Army official. Reagan National Airport was closed to all air traffic and is expected to reopen this morning. A massive search and rescue effort has continued throughout the night. At the time of the crash, Reagan National Airport reported clear skies with visibility of 10 miles or more and light winds, so it doesn't appear weather played a part. Initial reports seem to suggest this was possibly pilot error. Again, it's too soon to know, but in audio from the air traffic control tower around the time of the crash, you can hear a controller asking the helicopter, PAT-25, do you have the CRJ in sight, in reference to the passenger aircraft. Tower, did you see that? Another pilot is heard calling seconds after the apparent collision. One video posted to X and captured from the webcam at the Kennedy Center caught what appeared to be a midair collision near the Potomac River. This is a developing story, of course. We'll continue to update you as we have additional information. We just need to pray for all families who were affected by this horrible tragedy last night. It didn't take long for the confirmation hearing of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. yesterday. President Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services to turn contentious as Senate Democrats grilled him. We have an update on yesterday's hearing. There'll be another one today. President Trump is set to sign an executive order to prepare Guantanamo Bay for 30,000 criminal illegal aliens. We have an update on that for you. There was chaos and confusion yesterday over the OMB spending freeze memo earlier in the week. News outlets reported yesterday that the Trump administration had rescinded the order. That's not exactly true. The on-again, off-again spending freeze is confusing. We have what's actually going on for you. We'll try to simplify it in today's show. This is National School Choice Week, and legislators across the country are discussing ideas that will give parents and students more options when choosing the right schools for their education. South Carolina is no different, with the General Assembly addressing several bills that could potentially open up additional options. Candace Carroll with the Americans for Prosperity joins us today to discuss what her organization is doing around the country and in South Carolina specifically. It's another busy day, so let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
We're in the middle of National School Choice Week, and there's a lot of activity among parents and leaders around the country discussing ideas on how to offer more educational freedom to parents and students. According to the National School Choice Awareness Foundation, more than 60% of parents of school-aged children considered sending at least one of their children to a different school last year. Parents are looking for options when it comes to their children's education. This week is National School Choice Week, and today in Columbia, students and parents will be gathering at the state capitol to let state leaders know they support education freedom. Joining us today is Candace Carroll, Director of Public Affairs for Americans for Prosperity, South Carolina. Welcome, Candace. How are you?
Good, Joey. How are you?
I am good. Always good to catch up with you. It's been a while, and glad to have a chance to talk with you. Let's talk about what's going to happen later today. Hundreds, if not thousands, of parents and students will be sending a message to state legislators that they want options when it comes to their education. Talk with us about the role Americans for Prosperity has played in the fight to ensure choices in education.
Well, Joey, since I've been at Americans for Prosperity, I joined our team here in 2017 in South Carolina, and school choice has been a top priority for us since then. and it's something we have worked on across the country. We firmly believe that parents, not politicians, should be in the driver's seat of their child's education. And that parents should have opportunities, whether that is transferring to a different public school, a private school, a homeschooling opportunity, whatever is best for their child. We want to make sure they have that opportunity. And here in South Carolina in particular, as I've mentioned, this fight has been ongoing, and we thought we had a program that got passed and set up a couple of years ago. The state Supreme Court struck it down, and so here we are again having this same conversation of what can school choice look like. We've seen a national movement in favor of school choice. Really, I would say that's been accelerated since COVID, where parents want to have more of a seat at the table and they want to make these choices for their kids. And so we this week are joining with National School Choice Awareness Foundation and with Charleston Rise to host a huge celebration rally, if you will, at the State House, where we are bringing in hundreds of students from across the state to have conversations with their lawmakers about why this is so important to them. Why does school choice make a difference? And maybe they're here because they really love their school and they're here to celebrate that. Or maybe they're here because they want to have a different opportunity like so many students across the state. And so I think that it's just an ample time for us to lean into this conversation. Right now, the same conversations are being had in states like Texas and in states like Tennessee. And we've seen school choice movements in Georgia and North Carolina that have become really popular in Arizona and Florida. And Joey, frankly, I think if our South Carolina General Assembly doesn't move on school choice this year, that we continue to fall further and further behind. And it will really hinder our students here in South Carolina, which ultimately impacts the workforce. And so if we want to be able to have, a really solid workforce here in the state that's contributing, then we need to make sure students have the opportunities that are the best fit for them and that they're not restricted by their income, by their zip code, or by any other demographic.
Yeah. With us today, Candace Carroll. We're talking school choice. Candace, take us back and review the history of the Education Scholarship Trust Fund Act. You mentioned earlier the South Carolina Supreme Court had struck that down. Give us an overview of that, and what do you think legislation looks like that's being considered this year?
So in that Education Savings Trust Fund account, what that bill did that passed and was signed by the governor is it allowed for students to have access to funding that normally would have gone to their traditional public school, whatever their school of residency was. And so if they were moving schools, let's say they wanted to go to a private school, they could really use the same amount of funding. So it would be $6,000 that would have gone with that student that instead of going to their public school would have gone to a private school, could have gone to tutoring services, could have gone to educational therapies that some students need, whatever that might look like for them. And so a number of students were able to take advantage of that program. Over the summer, we saw students applying. We saw them getting approved. We saw the school year start in August 2024. And then shortly after that, we saw the ruling from the state Supreme Court come down and say, sorry, this is unconstitutional. Students had already been in school for 4 weeks, some for 6 weeks, depending on when their district started. And now, all of a sudden, in the middle of the fall, they were kind of left in limbo of can they continue to go to whatever school that they get transferred to, or can they continue their tutoring services? And really, I think had kind of the rug pulled out from underneath them, like we don't really know what's going to happen. And so now you have the opportunity in the General Assembly where I think really they want to make it right for those students. The state took on that obligation to give students the opportunity to change their educational environment. And now, because of the ruling of the state Supreme Court, they've got to figure out a different way to do that. And that's what we're seeing this week, and that's what we've seen as a priority from the state Senate this year, is we need to make this right, not just for these students, but we need to give all students the same opportunity. So there is another education scholarship account bill that's currently being debated on the Senate floor that would, increase the number of students who were eligible to up to 15,000 students. And so we'll see what that looks like. Debate is continuing and ongoing. But what we also know is there a tremendous appetite on the House side to have universal school choice. Open it up to every child in South Carolina. Yeah. And that's what we are fighting for at Americans for Prosperity, is that every single child should have the opportunity to go to whatever educational environment is the best fit for them.
Yep.
And, Joey, I'm a mom to a kiddo with special needs. We've done all the options. We've done private school, homeschool, public school, and it just really depends, and honestly depends from year to year as to what that looks like for my own kids. And so it's something that, yes, I fight on it for every student in South Carolina, but it's also a really personal issue for me, in seeing that opportunity come through of like understanding that there's, even if a school is good, and there's a lot of great schools across the state, it still may not be the best fit for that individual student, and they need to have the opportunity to change.
Yep. Candace Carroll is Director of Public Affairs with Americans for Prosperity, South Carolina. Candace, what is the objection, I guess, to giving parents and students more choices when it comes to education? What are some of the roadblocks that are put up by legislators? It seemed to me that this would just be a great idea and everybody would support it.
You would think, especially now that you hear that, President Trump's even talking about school choice from a federal level, but I think some of the roadblocks that we get is, well, it would take money away from a public school. If a student moves and that funding follows the student, then that original school is going to lose funding. Well, maybe. They might lose a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, they're lightening the load for their teachers because they're able to reduce that class size as students move. You're also hearing, well, there's not private schools in every community across the state, but there are a number of private schools, especially in our rural areas, that give students opportunities that maybe they just can't afford to take advantage of. So those are the big things that we're hearing. And then transportation, of course. But what this bill would allow for, and what the bill allowed for that passed a couple of years ago, is the funding could be used for transportation. So, that's something that we are very cognizant of, is that transportation piece, and it comes up time and time again. But I'm with you, Joey. I would think with us having a supermajority of Republicans in the House and in the Senate, and a governor who wants school choice, that we should be able to get something done, and not just a little bit of something, but a transformative thing for the state of South Carolina.
Candace Carroll, we appreciate what you do, and good luck later today. I hope that there's literally thousands of people who show up at the state capitol today and make it very clear that we do need a school choice. It's time for our legislature to act and to make choices available to parents and to students. Thank you again to Americans for Prosperity for being in the fight, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon, Candace.
Thanks, Joey. Have a great day.
Sure thing. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Donald Trump's nominee for Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, emphasized that he is not anti-vaccine when he appeared this morning at the first of 2 straight days of Senate confirmation hearings.
I want to work with our farmers. I want to work with our farmers and food producers to remove burdensome regulations and unleash American ingenuity. MAHA simply cannot succeed without a partnership, a full partnership of American farmers. In my advocacy, I've often disturbed the status quo by asking uncomfortable questions. Well, I'm not going to apologize for that. We have massive health problems in this country that we must face honestly. And the first thing I've done every morning for the past 20 years is to get on my knees and pray to God that he would put me in a position to end the chronic disease epidemic and to help America's children. That's why I'm so grateful to President Trump for the opportunity to sit before you today and seek your support and partnership in this endeavor. I will conclude with a promise. The members of this committee, to the President, and to all the tens of millions of parents across America, especially the moms, who have propelled this issue to center stage. Should I be so privileged as to be confirmed, we will make sure our tax dollars support healthy foods. We will scrutinize the chemical additives in our food supply. We will remove financial conflicts of interest from our agencies. We will create an honest, unbiased, gold standard science at HHS, accountable to the President, to Congress, and to the American people. We will reverse the chronic disease epidemic and put the nation back on the road to good health. Thank you.
Kennedy made it clear that he says he's not anti-vaccine, nor is he anti-industry. He said that he is pro-safety. If confirmed, Mr. Kennedy would have control over 18 powerful federal agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institutes of Health, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And Kennedy's, whose outspoken views on big pharma and the food industry has also sparked some controversy. He emphasized that he's not the, quote, enemy of food producers. American farms are the bedrock of our culture and national security, he said. I want to work with our farmers and food producers to remove burdensome regulations and unleash American ingenuity. Yesterday's hearing was somewhat contentious, primarily because of Kennedy's controversial vaccine views, including his repeated claims linking vaccines to autism, which have been debunked by scientific research, according to some. Kennedy also served for years as chair of the or chief legal counsel for Children's Health Defense, the nonprofit organization that he founded that has advocated against vaccines and sued the federal government numerous times over the years, including a challenge over the authorization of the COVID vaccine for children. After Trump's easy win in November, Kennedy has said that he won't take away anybody's vaccines. And in his opening statement, Kennedy confirmed, all of my kids are vaccinated, and I believe vaccines have a critical role in health care. HHS is a massive federal department, has approximately 90,000 people, an annual budget of roughly $1.7 trillion. And Kennedy has said that he wants to shift the focus of the agencies that he would oversee, if confirmed, towards promotion of a healthy lifestyle and get to the root causes of a lot of our chronic diseases, which has garnered some bipartisan support in Congress. Kennedy has said that he would aim to overhaul dietary guidelines and take aim at ultra-processed foods, among other initiatives. During his opening statement, he warned that the United States has worse health than any other developed nation, yet we spend far more on health care, at least double, and in some cases triple, he said. Kennedy's 71 years old. He's a longtime environmental activist, a crusader who is part of the nation's most storied political dynasty. He launched a long-shot campaign for the Democrat presidential nomination against Joe Biden in early 2023. 6 months later, he switched to an independent run for the White House when it became very evident that the Democrats were not going to have a primary to to nominate their candidate, that Joe Biden had that nomination wrapped up. Of course, we know how that ended, don't we? Mr. Kennedy made major headlines again last August when he dropped his presidential bid and endorsed Donald Trump. Kennedy has long identified as a Democrat. That's his family. He's repeatedly invoked his late father, the former Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and his late uncle, former President John F. Kennedy, both of whom were assassinated in the 1960s. Kennedy in recent years has built relationships, though, with a lot of conservatives, due in part to his high-profile vaccine skepticism. RFK, however, may be one of the toughest of President Trump's nominees to get confirmed. Opposition to his nomination has been fierce by a lot of groups, particularly some advocacy groups running. They're literally running campaigns urging senators to vote against his confirmation. Many members of his own family have been very vocal in their opposition to him as well. They were opposed to him challenging Joe Biden in a Democrat primary that never happened. They were not supportive of his independent run for the White House. And on the eve of his confirmation hearing late yesterday afternoon, his very famous, well-known cousin, Caroline Kennedy, daughter of the late John F. Kennedy, sent a letter to senators that charged Kennedy as one of the preys on the desperation of parents and sick children whose actions have cost lives. She was very critical of her cousin, saying that he was not qualified to be in this position and that she would not support him, and she urged senators not to support him as well. She seemed to be referring to Kennedy's connections to a measles outbreak in 2019 in the Pacific Island nation of Samoa, where 83 people died. Among those vocal in opposing Kennedy also are other Democrat governors around the country. It's going to be interesting to watch, folks. Buckle up, because this one is going to get rough. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. Yesterday, in his continued attack on illegals in our country, President Trump signed another executive order. Wonder how many executive orders he signed to date. I've lost count. Anyway, this order is instructing the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security to prepare 30,000 detention beds at Guantanamo Bay. Gitmo is about to become the new home for criminal illegal aliens who pose a threat to the American people. And let me tell you, the left is losing their mind over this. But you know what? This is Trump doing what no other president before him has had the courage to do, making sure that these criminals never come back. President Trump made the announcement during some comments yesterday.
I'm also signing an executive order to instruct the Departments of Defense and Homeland Security to begin preparing the 30,000-person migrant facility at Guantanamo Bay. Most people don't even know about it. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal illegal aliens threatening the American people. Some of them are so bad we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back, so we're going to send them out to Guantanamo. This will double our capacity immediately, right? And that's a tough place to get out of. Today's signings bring us one step closer to eradicating the scourge of migrant crime in our communities once and for all. And it was just it's just an unforced error that we even have to be doing this. Now we need Congress to provide full funding for the complete and total restoration of our sovereign borders, as well as financial support to remove record numbers of illegal aliens.
Now, let's talk about this for a minute. Let's pause, because we're not talking about your average illegal border crosser here, like the left is going to want you to believe. We're talking about hardened criminals, murderers, rapists, gang members, people who shouldn't be anywhere near American communities. And yet, under Biden's policies, these people are running loose. They're out there wreaking havoc on their communities. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody seemed to be looking for them, because the Biden administration was too weak to enforce the law. They thought that it was going to violate their rights in some way. They have no rights. They have no rights in this country. Trump laid it out clearly yesterday. Some of the criminals are so dangerous, he said, we don't even trust their home countries to keep them locked up. And he's right. You really think about countries like Mexico, Honduras, or maybe the Dominican Republic. Do you think they're going to keep these guys locked up? No chance. No chance at all. They'll be back on the streets in no time, and if history has taught us anything, they'll find a way to sneak back across the border. That's just what they do. And every time they come back, they're angrier than the first. So what's the solution? Send them somewhere that they can't come back. I think Trump probably has a good idea. Guantanamo Bay. They're not going to leave Guantanamo Bay unless they're good swimmers. And no, nobody could swim that distance. So, folks, let's talk about why this is happening. It's happening because illegal immigration under Joe Biden was just an absolute disaster. We've talked about it for years now. We saw record high border crossings. We saw entire cities overwhelmed. We saw drug cartels and human traffickers getting richer than ever. And worst of all, we saw criminals being released into our communities instead of being deported. We saw them given nice hotel rooms to stay in. They were given tickets or airline tickets to go to a city of their choice. But guess what? That's all over. That's done. Trump's new policies are already making a difference. I told you yesterday about the illegal immigrant encounters have plummeted 60% at the border. Let me repeat that, 60%, they're down. That's what happens when you enforce the law, and that's what happens when you let the world know that you're going to enforce the laugh. They know the consequences. They know not to play around with it. They weren't afraid of Joe Biden. In fact, they laughed. They laughed at the Biden administration. They had no confidence whatsoever that Joe Biden was going to do anything but welcome them with open arms, give them a $5,000 credit card. So let's look at the numbers so far. Just yesterday, ICE arrested another 969 illegal immigrants. And we're not talking about, again, harmless folks here who are here for a better life. No. The White House even posted about it on X, highlighting some of the worst offenders, child rapists, gang members, people with ties to terrorist organizations. We don't know why they were here and what they wanted to do here, but they didn't come for a better life. They didn't come to make our communities better. These are the kinds of people that the left wants to protect. It's unbelievable. Every time I think about this, I try to get into the head of someone who is like New York Attorney General Letitia James, who's defending them. She's been out there attacking Trump's immigration policies left and right. But get this, after ICE conducted a major raid in New York City, she actually criticized him for rounding up criminal illegal aliens. How do you think like that? How are you a state official, an attorney general at that, and you're defending people who have broken the law to get into our country? Can somebody help me try to understand Letitia James? Or am I just going to drive myself insane? I mean, Letitia James, are you even listening to yourself? You're defending criminals over the safety of your own state, over your own city, New York City. This is why crime is out of control in places like New York, because their so-called leaders refuse to enforce the law. Now, I know the media is going to spin this one like crazy. You're going to hear them say, oh, Trump is reviving mass detention. This is inhumane. But let me ask you a very simple question. Is it inhumane to protect American citizens? Is it inhumane to make sure that convicted rapists aren't walking free in our neighborhoods? You think Laken Riley's family would think it's inhumane that these murderers are on Guantanamo Bay, that they're out on an island so that they can't harm anyone else like they did their sweet precious girl? Because that's what was happening under Biden. And here's another thing. Trump isn't going to stop. He's not going to stop with just enforcing existing immigration laws. He's pushing Congress, and I hope that the majority in both the House and the Senate that we sent there, that they're going to fully refund the restoration of our U.S. borders and whatever that takes, whether it's continuing and finishing building the wall, more troops down at our border to turn people back. Trump wants more ICE agents. He wants more Border Patrol and more resources to finally end this crisis once and for all. Let the world know for sure that you do not come into the United States of America unless you have proper documentation and you are invited into our country. No more of this sneaking in the middle of the night. If you do, you're going to go right back, and there are going to be consequences. So here's the big takeaway. Trump promised he would control our borders, right? He promised he would get criminals off our streets, right? And in just a few days back in office, just over a week, he's already making that happen. And the left, they don't know what to do. They spent years telling you that immigration enforcement is racist. They've told you that ICE is cruel. They've told you that securing the border is un-American. But now they're watching as President Trump proves them wrong again. And let's not forget, this is exactly what we asked for, right? Poll after poll has shown that a majority of Americans support stricter border security and the deportation of criminal illegal aliens. Send them back to their own country. But the left doesn't care about what you want. They only care about their radical open borders agenda. Again, I don't understand it. I can't even try to understand it. So here's my question for you. And I'd love for you to email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. You can text me. Do you support Trump's move to house criminal illegal aliens at Guantanamo Bay? Is that a good use of that? Do you think ICE should be doing even more to round up dangerous criminals? And what do you think about Letitia James actually defending illegal immigrants over law-abiding American citizens? Love to get your comments on all of those. Meanwhile, some of the leftist mayors are still vowing to obstruct the federal government's efforts to round up the illegals. Have you heard about the latest? Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, he announced yesterday that he would not cooperate with federal law enforcement officers on deportations of illegal immigrants. Over the first weekend, of course, and you know, we've seen a couple of thousand or more now. The mayor, he's a Democrat. I don't think I need to tell you that. Said in a press conference, I want to speak directly to people who are undocumented. We love you. We care about you, he said. In the city of Minneapolis, we will stand up for you, and we will do anything in our power to help because you're not an alien in our city. You're a neighbor. This guy is nuts. He is absolutely nuts to be protecting these people when they are criminals. They have broken the law. Fry continued explaining his legal strategy to avoid deportations. He said, now, in Minneapolis, we have what is called a separation ordinance. And that separation ordinance states clearly that our city officials, our police officers, and beyond will not be gathering information showing who is and is not documented. We do not ask the question with regards to immigration status, and because we haven't asked the question, we don't have any data to show documentation status in our city, the mayor said. He is harboring criminals. That's what he's doing because he knows that he has a pretty large population of illegals in Minneapolis, and he's protecting them. He's saying it's okay. I got a feeling he's probably going to have more come to his city, don't you? Because word's going to get out among the illegals that, hey, the mayor in Minneapolis, Mayor Fry, he's going to protect us. He loves us. He wants us there. Let's go to Minneapolis, and they'll make their way there. And I hope that the people in Minneapolis, whenever he's on the ballot again, when his name is on that ballot, I hope they remember this and they vote him out. They turn him out for not wanting to protect their own safety and the safety of our country. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. There was a lot of confusion yesterday about the federal funding freeze that was announced earlier this week when the Office of Management and Budget sent out a memo saying that spending had been frozen. We got an explanation for you. First, let's get to some of your text messages. David text, I think Trump was 100% correct in what he did in pardoning those January 6 people. I think it sends a clear message to the Democrat left side that we're not going to stand by and let their unfair treatment of overruled government put our people in jail just because of their opinion. I think Lindsey Graham just needs to sit back and keep his mouth shut. Texter, this is Curtis, says, good morning, Joey. My name is Curtis. I feel that everything President Trump has done so far has been necessary and fair, and that includes the J6 pardons. I mean, good grief, look at all the people Biden pardoned. Tony writes, Joey, not sure if you've heard this yet, but the governor of Chicago is helping immigrants get driver's license with fake names to avoid being captured and deported. Tell me that's not true, Tony. I have not heard that, but I'm going to look that up. I'm going to do a little research on that. If it's true, I think that's a violation of the law. The governor should be arrested if that's true. I'll report back to you tomorrow. Texter says, heard today from a nonprofit agency that payments from FEMA is currently on hold. They worked on rescues and EMS standby during the Helene storm in Asheville. Hopefully FEMA payments are not really part of the recent freeze of funding. Well, there's been a lot of confusion and chaos, and that's what the left wanted. Members of the Democrat members of the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, governors, mayors all around the country wanted this to be confusing. And they started crying wolf. They started begging and pleading, saying that, our essential services are going to be shut down because federal funding has been frozen. That's not what Trump was doing. Now, a White House spokesperson yesterday said that the federal funding freeze announced earlier by President Trump's Office of Management and Budget remains in effect despite media reports that it has been rescinded. Now, here's what happened. Caroline Leavitt posted on X, this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's executive order on federal funding remains in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. So what happened? Well, earlier yesterday, various news outlets, you can imagine which ones, reported that the funding freeze had been rescinded. A White House official announced that the decision to pull back a proposed spending freeze that threatened to disrupt hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S. aid programs was reported yesterday by Reuters and others. The decision was announced in a copy of a new memo that was obtained by the Washington Post after the administration's move earlier to stop spending resulted in a backlash. And boy, I mean, again, it was a huge backlash. What the original memo sought to do was simply to allow the Trump administration to take a look at any programs, at all programs actually, to justify their spending. And that's going to continue. Acting OMB Director Matthew Vaith used the memo to tell federal agencies that the department's memorandum, M2513, that created all the ruckus on Monday, is rescinded, but the program is not. Now why? Because when the federal judge, when the Joe Biden appointed federal judge issued an injunction, that meant that everything had to stop. The White House was not able to communicate with the various agencies who were affected. And that meant that no negotiation could take place. Nothing could move forward. So the White House rescinded the memo, but not the executive order. Now, I know it's confusing, but they rescinded the memo after this liberal leftist judge issued his ruling. They rescinded the memo so that they can communicate with all these agencies whose funding they want to review. A White House official yesterday emphasized that the move is simply to end the confusion and end the federal injunction, not to halt the intended freeze of federal aid at odds with the president's executive order. And part of that executive order, remember, was to eliminate DEI. Each individual agency still has to come back with a plan to the White House on how they're going to eliminate their DEI offices. And once they do that, the Trump White House will have a chance to review all of these, and they will go one by one to determine whether or not these agencies deserve funding. And if they don't, then the Trump White House has the option of not funding them any longer, of cutting them out of the budget. The judge Judge Lauren Alicon, who called for an emergency video conference regarding the advocacy groups, several advocacy groups, nonprofits had filed because they get a lot of money from this. The judge added that the ruling would maintain the status quo, meaning that Things are not going to change. They're going to continue to be able to operate, but the Trump administration will continue to be able to overview these programs as well. Another hearing is scheduled for February the 3rd at 11 a.m., where Alacon will determine the next steps for the case. Some of the groups that sued the Trump White House: National Council of Nonprofits, the American Public Health Association, Main Street Alliance, a New York LGBT nonprofit known as SAGE. They filed the lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, arguing that the Trump administration's plan would have a devastating impact on hundreds of thousands of grant recipients. Well, what they need to understand, and any organization who's concerned about their funding, if you get grant money from a federal agency, is you're going to be looked at. Your program is going to be put under a microscope. If you're doing what you are supposed to be doing, if you're benefiting the American people, if you can justify your program, you have absolutely nothing to be concerned about, because Donald Trump is not trying to just eliminate your funding for the sake of eliminating your funding. What he is going to look at, though, if you're one of these organizations who is just wasting money, who is heavy administratively, you're paying a bunch of your nonprofit, and you're paying several of your top executives hundreds of thousands of dollars, you might want to be brushing off your resume, because you're going to be looking for a new job. You're the exact person that Donald Trump is looking for. Because look, here's the thing, folks. We can't continue spending like we have. Some programs are going to have to go away. And yes, it may be painful for some people. But like these programs that was created because of DEI, because of diversity, equity, inclusion, they're going to go away, because they shouldn't have been put into place to begin with. It was just one of those crazy runaway programs of the Biden-Harris administration. It was that nonsense of them thinking that we can legislate people's feelings about one another. We can make you accept a man who wants to dress up as a woman and accept that that's normal. We can make you hire somebody who's really not the best person for the job, but because the color of their skin is black, or they're a certain sex, or they identify as a trans, we're going to make you hire them, not because they're qualified to do the job. That kind of nonsense is what's going to stop. And if you're a nonprofit, if you're one of these non-government agencies out there who's getting a lot of money from the federal government, again, brush off your resume, because you're going to be looking for a new job. That's what we sent Donald Trump to Washington to do.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.